it's good to have you on Better Tech. Let's start off today's episode first with your introduction, your current role, and then we'll move right into the topic.
All right, great. Appreciate it. It's good to be here. I have about 21 years in the tech space. Achieved my Cisco CCIE and voice about 15 years ago. So been heavy in the collaboration space, as well as building out data center practices, security practices, wireless. So very Cisco heavy, maybe for the first half of my career, and then broaden those horizons to other vendors and manufacturers. Growing a company that was then acquired maybe after 12 or 14 years of existence, and then kind of moved into larger organizations. Currently, I'm the CTO of ConvergeOne Government Solutions. So we are primarily focused on the federal space, DoD and civilian, and we're a solely owned subsidiary of ConvergeOne.
Right. So Ryan, the topic that we have for today is hybrid workforce and building teams. So first of all, does a hybrid work model mean that the work culture of the company will change entirely?
Not entirely. I think if it's done correctly, you'll see a lot of benefits from it. So putting in the foundation, the correct collaboration tools is key. Make sure that those tools fit with the way the organization is shaped and can provide easy access and mobility for the users, end users, all the support side of the house as well.
Do you guys follow that at ConvergeOne?
Do we follow that at ConvergeOne? Yes, we do. We actually sell the majority of the product lines in the collaboration space. So everything from Teams, WebEx, Zoom, Avaya, Pepsit. So there's a lot of different things that we can, offer a solution set. So it's really understanding what the customer's needs are and how they work their workflow for which solution would be best for them.
Right. So as a CTO, so how do you believe that the C-suite and, upper management, how can they make adjustments and modify their work culture to fit this hybrid model?
I think it starts on the management side of really providing the correct training on how to work with a dispersed, set of workforces, how the teaming works, how you really should collaborate, as a team, and kind of build those models as a standardization across the board.
And is this something that you feel is more comfortable? Are you more comfortable working in a hybrid work environment as opposed to something that was followed previously in your previous roles?
Yeah, I've been working hybrid for, probably 15 years. So I've seen some big benefits from it, just being able to do, a lot of productivity on my side, but also really being able to reach out to other individuals, across the world at certain time zones to get work done during a 24-hour cycle. So there really is some good benefit to it.
And are there any cons to it, Ryan?
Yeah, I think just if it's not managed correctly and expectations aren't set up front, it can get pretty messy. So just as long as you have a good strategy overall, it really helps that flow and understanding across the board.
Right. So just speaking of that, a recent study in Harvard Business School showed that hybrid work is going to be messy and there are risks associated with it. And it brings the worst out of both worlds. So what's your take on that? You've been working in such a model for 15 plus years. So do you see any truth to it?
Oh, I've seen some mess. Absolutely. I mean, you got the shadow IT aspect where people are on, different collaboration platforms. So that really needs to be standardized. Once that strategy is put in place, that really helps kind of shape that long-term strategy on all the back-end systems that need to be integrated, interoperability. So if you don't have the interoperability and that strategy in place, you really have a disparate systems, set across your board. And, with individuals putting on their own collaboration tools, it really isolates and silos, certain aspects of the business.
And again, that standardization is more so on the hierarchical level. It's not something that, everybody gets a take on. It's something that the senior management decides.
Yes, but you really should spend the time with, the employees, see what their workflows are to come up with that strategy. To be, pick something because you have a vendor that you like and you think is going to be good because you were sold on it from the upper management aspect of it, may not actually be the best strategy to go with if it's not going to work for the workflows of your user base, as well as the interoperability on outside of your organization and how people would interact with the organization.
So Ryan, what's your take on managing the onboarding and offboarding process effectively, specifically in a virtual recruitment environment?
Yeah, so, I actually onboarded 4 individuals on Monday, all virtual. So it's really good to kind of get that first process done, make sure that they have access to everything, how the tools get used, if you start there on that strategy, all the other things that they got to do on the onboarding becomes a lot easier. And then they have a group, where they start their first team. So there's back and forth now between that new group for all the base questions that they have. So they feel like they've joined a system. And then from there, you kind of introduce them to the other teams and it just spreads. And that culture, should start from day one.
Absolutely. And what are the effects of hybrid systems on vendor management? How is this adaptable to the organizational change? What are the dynamics? I mean, I'm a layman over here, so feel free to elaborate as much as possible.
Yeah, so when it comes to managing vendors, I think especially in the COVID area, has been pretty tough. No trade shows, conventions, everything's kind of been put online, but really you don't have that feel and the ability to really ask those deep questions. So I think that's been struggling in general across the board. It's probably helped some of the bigger players out there because they have a lot more depth and breadth. But the newcomers or something that could actually, have a big transformation within an organization has been tougher to obtain. So I do see a transition back to, more interactions with different vendors across the board. And having that more personal touch, I think, is key. And you're just not a number across the board on the vendor side.
Right. So Ryan, you have experience both in B2B and B2C marketplaces. So I'm just trying to understand, in hybrid workplace systems, what are the major dynamics of winning attention in B2B marketplace, and how do they differ from B2C?
Yeah, so I think, on the B2B side, being a little bit more vendor agnostic in solution sets, is key. Really trying to focus on the outcomes and providing, the right solution set to offset that is pretty easy in the B2B market. And I think marketing, advertising, and solution selling, is fairly straightforward in a hybrid marketplace. Now, the B2C, I think, is the tough one. So, I've been on the retail side for a good amount of years as well. And that works in a certain amount of knowledge transfer and easy access. So it's a very positive route, I think, for if you're selling a commodity on the B2C side. But if you're selling something that's very touchable and emotional, like my sister-in-law is on the high-end fashion side in New York, has a small design house. She had a really tough time because, her clients want to feel, touch, experience an emotional buy. Going directly online for the last year and a half, she had a big learning curve, and now it's kind of going backwards where she's actually starting to do, shows and get that feeling back. So it's been an interesting ride for sure.
Yeah. So Ryan, speaking of the current environment, right, with the pandemic, and we've seen like major problem with employee retention, right? There have been lots of layoffs, lots of turnovers. So considering a shift towards a hybrid working environment, is it good for employee retention? How can we possibly build upon that?
Yeah, I think it's great for, organizations that embrace it. The ones that give the flexibility to come to the office, the ones, to work remote but be able to collaborate back and forth. So you're accomplishing the same goal and being productive where you really can be productive. So I think it's the best of both worlds, to be honest. And if you do it right, you should be able to maintain your employees that way.
Did you kind of notice like a shift? For instance, I don't know if you guys were fully on a work from home model before, and you've recently transitioned into a hybrid one. Did you see some employees kind of resisting to that? Has there been kind of difficulty?
Yeah, so we've always worked within our organization internally, hybrid mentality. But DoD is one of our larger customers, so they went from all on-prem to having to work in a hybrid model, and having that whole period of time where they didn't have any access to hybrid workforce. So putting in things of WebEx, Teams, Zoom was their first step, and that actually for them, from my perspective, opened a lot of different doors for transformation within the DoD and civilian agency sector for cloud solutions. Anything that they want to be able to transform now is a lot easier for them to do once they move into that cloud scenario. So that's been really great, for them, I think, in the long term moving forward.
So basically, the client kind of equipped employees with all the necessary tools and stuff to kind of make the shift easier.
Absolutely. And everybody had to do it. So it was a great, I think, learning process for everybody and opened the eyes of many executives to make that change and the willingness, now to go to cloud and accept what that change is and how fast that change can be. As a quick example, did a large deployment, took 18 months. This was, before everything was kind of cloud heavy. That same deployment, same type and scale took 45 days. So just the scale and as fast as you can transform is very, very powerful at this point.
And has there been some sort of a challenge regarding communication with this?
The challenge I see is really if you don't really have a good strategy. If you don't have a good strategy for understanding how the workflows interact on your organization and what technology you're going to put in place to interact with those workflows is key. So the collaboration tools, the back-end systems all kind of need to be aligned and interoperability. So if you don't have the interoperability part to it, that's also going to be a deterrent for people actually using the tools correctly.
Right. So we're just nearing the end of our episode. So Ryan, do you think that the future of work will largely be based on hybrid teams?
Absolutely, I do. I think it's, especially when you're looking on the technical side to get a resource, now you can go source across the nation or other countries is key. That marketplace really opened up for employment. So you can find somebody specialized in something in a completely different area than you were looking previously, and now they can be part of your team, no problem.
Okay, just speaking about that, would it be correct to say that this type of work model is more suited for those in technical roles?
No, I don't. I think, and I just kind of go back to the technical role in general, because I live and breathe that every day. But the technology has been put in place for organizations in general. So it's really just the management and the strategy that organizations put in place to make that very useful and productive.
What are your key takeaways from scaling distributed engineering teams?
Really, I think it comes down to that's a very positive thing to be able to scale and distribute engineering teams, have them collaborate, and the management that you put in, from what I've seen that works really good, especially on a distributed engineering model, is to have a team of, maybe 4 to 5 individuals. As soon as it kind of goes above that, that's kind of where you're going to run into some problems of people feeling isolated, not in touch, et cetera. So communication plans are very key across the board as well for the distributed model.
Right. And lastly, Ryan, do you have any advice for scaling remote teams and regarding any future workforce?
Yeah, really look at, what strategy is in place today that you have for collaboration, how the workflows work, spend the time to understand the details in that and the interoperability to make it really scalable and interact inside and outside of your organization. Okay.
Thanks, Ryan, for joining us today on Better Tech. That wraps up our episode.
Yeah, appreciate it.